Awesome. Cool. Live. So this is technically episode 3 of, and I forget the name of my own podcast, STEM in a Nutshell. So, Tiffany, thank you for coming back and having an official episode about plant genetics and all the things that are green and variations of green that we need in life.
Food, more specifically.
Food.
But...
Yes, that's kind of a big thing if you don't think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Need it just a little
Because
bit.
food comes from more than just the grocery stores.
True. Yes, I can definitely verify that with what I attempt to grow for food in the summer. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes not. Although I was very
You do
proud.
more than I do.
Well, if we didn't have that giant heat wave last summer that just scorched and killed everything, my tomato plant was cool because it was one of those black tomatoes. So they were like that deep, dark purple, almost black, and they were really, really cool. But I got like 4 of them before summer just scorched everything. And my zucchini plants were actually growing. Yeah. Well, I mean, 114 or whatever it was not going to survive for days on end like that.
Imagine what farmers have to deal with when it's their entire field.
The farmers got screwed here. Like all the ones that we have big farms up on the mountain, and they have a lot of the orchards and stuff like that. And so it's a little cooler, at least being high up on the mountain. But their stuff all, like the fruit trees and everything, it came months ahead of time. So like our apples are supposed to be like around October, and it was summertime and the apples were ready to go. Like it threw off everything. And then down here in the lower lands, the wheat farmers here, it was a loss. So it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Just
wonder how and the volatility. True. I mean, the volatility of the climate is another reason why plant breeding is so important. And yeah, I guess, should I introduce myself or?
Oh yeah. So let me ask, Tiffany, you are what's your technical title? Like a plant geneticist or?
Oh, I'm not that fancy.
Well, what you do, I mean.
Officially, my job title, I'm a biological science technician for the Agricultural Research Service of the USDA.
Slap that on a sticker.
work.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why the federal government, I mean, that's why there's so many acronyms. So my full location of work is USDA, ARS, SNF, and the SNF stands for Soybean Nitrogen Fixation Research Unit, Soybean and Nitrogen Fixation Research Unit. It's one of those where I'm just so used to using like SNF that I sometimes forget what it stands for, but I know that soybean and nitrogen fixation are a part of it. So.
Awesome.
Before that, so I'm more or less sort of like the feet on the ground. My bosses tell me what I need to do. I got my highest level of schooling was a master's in plant breeding and genetics. I don't really have a desire for a PhD because I just don't want to deal with that aspect of it. I like being the person in the lab. I like not having the pressure of like publishing on my back and just getting to do the actual science.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Totally fair. And you didn't start out you started out doing like art or history or something, right?
Yes. So, I was undetermined, but I was like going for fine arts. And actually, to go back even just a little step, I'm a high school dropout.
All right. Power.
Yeah. So I don't really have a conventional educational background. I never really was fond of high school, and it was more like the system and the structure just didn't suit me, and I did whatever I could to convince my parents that I needed to drop out and get my GED and go to community college, because another thing I didn't want to deal with was taking the SAT. And when you go to community college, you don't need an SAT.
Yep, that's the way I went.
right?
And
I mean,
cheaper to knock out that shit at the community college too. Like, I highly recommend people
yes.
to just do the 2-year prereq stuff and at like half the cost at community college.
Yeah. And to me, the whole university system, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in this country, in the United States, it's
It sucks.
it's just, yeah, I think I kind of feel like a bachelor's degree is sort of like the equivalent of a high school diploma.
It's definitely how it's treated.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, I mean, it's just the education system itself right there. You're already like pushing back people who don't have the opportunities or the, resources to go to a university. So again, community colleges are really important for that because that is another way to access the university system. But in going to community college, you may find that you don't actually need your bachelor's degree for certain things, especially if you want to do trades. And that's,
the community college I went to was very it was like technical community college, so, and they did a lot of trade school there, because we have 2 community colleges here. One is like the technical school like that, and then the other one is more of the artsy fartsy one. They're separated.
Yeah, I went to Northern Virginia Community College, so I was I kind of bounced around between campuses, between Annandale and Alexandria. Yeah. First Lady Jill Biden teaches at the Alexandria campus.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. She still teaches. She taught while she was second lady. Is that what they call the vice president? Second. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't actually know.
I wasn't there when she was there, but.
Sorry, sneeze.
That's okay.
Like, try not to sneeze right into the microphone. Sorry. Tickle.
Oh, well, sorry. Yeah, I did start out fine arts. No, you're fine. And the negotiation I worked out with my parents was your first year of community college, because they do it semester by semester, you do like what you would have done, like your core academics, your junior and senior year. So your first and second semester are that. So my third semester, I did like 100%, like all art classes, and it was fantastic. I loved it. But I just wasn't feeling like, fulfilled, I guess. And I was really thinking hard about what I wanted to do with my life. And after a little while, I was like, I love art, I love science. Why don't I do art restoration? And then so I was like taking chemistry heavy. My associate was basically going to be in chemistry. And I took a science elective of geology, and I learned about soil formations. And through like the honors section in my class and having to do extra research, I stumbled across an article about a master's student breeding a tomato plant that would attract its pests' enemies more effectively. And I was hooked, like absolutely hooked, and
cool.
Haven't looked back. Yeah, I was like, I want to do that. Like, that tomato plant is going to feed people, and what better way to actually feel fulfilled and like I'm doing something that's helping people besides preserve art for however long, right. And praying I don't fuck it up in the process of saving
it. It's a lot of pressure.
Right. So yeah, I got into plant breeding, and yeah, just haven't looked back. It's been a lot of fun, challenging. It's definitely a different world that I never would have thought I would have found myself in.
So
as a kid.
Question.
Oh no, go ahead.
Plant breeding. I imagine this something to help people. The difference between plant breeding and GMO plants, like
genetic engineering. Yeah. So
a little different
as a collective. Yeah. So genetic modification as a whole really pertains to like everything. Plants genetically modify themselves by cross-pollinating, on a regular basis. And some plants are more promiscuous than others,
Woohoo.
which may lead to more modification. Yes. So in plant breeding, like we have a very some people might take offense to some of our like bad humor. But
We
it's
have that humor
yeah,
in science. Like humor thrives in
yeah.
science. Anybody steps into science class and is jokes galore. So
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, because science is everyday life,
yeah.
right? I mean, the fact that we're living carbon, beings, that's all science. But yeah, so we do say things like promiscuity, emasculation is a common term that's used. What is it? Interbreeding and inbred lines. Like it's mhm.
So how would a plant
Or it's a
be
combination
emasculated?
of it. Oh, so before a plant or before a flower can like fully develop to the point where the pollen can, I guess, pollinate the female. Oh my gosh, don't get me on botany because I'm bad at botany.
Okay.
So flower parts and stuff. Yes, I can. Yeah. So anyway,
I can't say
so the
anything like
female,
stem and leaf. Eh, and
yeah,
flowers.
and like in my head, like I know what I'm, looking at, but
Yeah.
I sometimes can't put the words. It's like
There's a lot of
reading. So
words.
I,
And they are big long words too. Like I've looked at like this whole
yeah,
anatomy thing like with bees and pollinators and I was just like, how do people memorize this and pronounce it all perfectly? Amazing.
it's because it's their focus.
Ah,
Yeah, if you study, yeah, when you study that very specific thing, and it's, I kind of get frustrated when people expect scientists to know all science because no.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I can't even
I
name
can
every
talk
bone in
to
the body,
you.
so being honest.
I know like phalanges, right? Aren't your fingers your phalanges?
Phalanges. It's a fun word to say.
Phalanges. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things like in Bio 101. Yeah, I memorized like, I guess, the major bones and stuff because I had to like fill out a sheet. But once I left that, gone. Like,
Right.
I don't need to remember that anymore.
Right. For
So,
sure.
and only things like phalanges I remember because, come on, phalanges.
I know.
And
They're just great. Dancing phalanges. I don't know why that always pops in my head. I
oh
had to have seen it somewhere and I
gosh,
don't know where. But yeah.
that's a good one. Yeah, so emasculating. We emasculate flowers so that the pollen cannot pollinate or impregnate the ovary, the female. So,
Okay.
and
So
the
why would you
reason we
want to
do
do that?
that,
Yeah.
so depending on the flower, which all the plants I've worked with are self-pollinating, which means
Mhm.
they pollinate themselves.
Yeah. I've got
They
plants
have
like that.
both like both male and female flowers, and I forget the name of each, whatever. So we'll just stick with what I know.
Yeah. Right. Go for it.
um, so we do that so that they can't pollinate because we want to prevent. Well, yeah, we want to prevent self-pollination, and that way we can go to another plant, so like a soybean or a wheat, or so let's say we're doing this with soybean, which is the plant I'm currently working with now. So we do that. We go another soybean line that has a trait or another trait of interest
Mhm.
that the one that I emasculated doesn't have, and use that pollen to pollinate the female. And hopefully we have our F1, which is the first generation of the cross, which
Okay.
also would be the hybrid. And then we'll take that and grow it and see whether or not it has the traits of interest. And sometimes it takes multiple crossing and yeah. And that's sort of a traditional, if you look at your Gregor Mendel study that he did, it's a very traditional way that they've been doing for thousands of years to breed plants.
Mendel
Actually,
was the
maybe not thousands
bean-pong
of
guy, right?
years. Peas. Yeah,
Peas.
he did peas and pea flower.
Yeah.
Flower color.
Right. remember
Yeah.
that because that was like something we kind of played with doing in third grade. With did we use peas or beans?
Did
Maybe
you
we used peas.
did you guys
Yeah.
cross pollinate?
Yeah, we had to do something in third grade and grow them under,
Ooh.
like, use a little thing and pollinate over here and a little over there. And then we also did ones under different, like, water and light conditions to see how they would all grow differently.
Oh,
It was a pretty cool school.
I didn't do that. I had mealworms.
Ooh.
That's what I did in third grade.
Oh. We
And
had
we did
rats
not.
in
Ooh,
sixth grade. We got to do,
I'm not really
like,
a
controlled
fan of
groups with
rodents.
rats and then what would happen if we gave them, like, sugar water or different types of food and see how they would,
Behaved?
behave differently. And then we got to keep the rats after if we wanted to, so I kept a white rat. It was my friend.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, I got a
That
furry out
did
of it.
not. Oh. A little fur baby, a little rat baby.
Oh, rats
I'm
are
not a
great
big fan of
pets. They're really
rodents. They
weird,
do
but
seem like
they're really
good. I had a
nice
friend
pets.
who's had a pet rat, so yeah. I just don't really care for rodents.
No, that's fair.
Outside,
Not
they're
a lot of people
fine.
do. Yeah, yeah. When it comes to wild ones, I need them to stay outside, like, and not inside. Like the mouse problem
I
we
don't
have
want
here.
my cats to kill them. It's just gross dealing with
Well, and they have what is that disease with the feces?
oh,
Uh,
I forget. It's a fungus though, right?
yeah, I can't remember what it is, but yeah, that's something
Rabbits
to, like,
have
super
it.
not have in your life. Not chance with, like,
Hmm.
the mouse problem that I had here for a while, and I was constantly, like, vacuuming up
Oh.
their stuff. It's just it's like, you're cute and furry, but I need you to, like, exit the premises right now.
Oh, here we have roaches.
Ew, I've
That's
never
a
seen one.
southern. What?
I've never seen one. I don't
I
know.
can show you one, but
They
I
have
won't do
to
that right
exist
now.
everywhere, right? Because they would survive a nuclear holocaust. That's the thing.
Not necessarily. I mean, I guess they could, and it depends on the type of roach, but like the American
Okay.
roach, I believe, is in the south. So I when I was ripping open a wall in my new house, um I found a roach nest. Thankfully, I only had two adult roaches, but a lot of feces. So I deal with roach feces on a much more regular basis than I ever would mouse feces.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
And roaches to me smell like kitty litter, like old roach. Old roach smell is kitty litter smell, but like fresher roach smell is like a dirty litter box. It's like
Weird. I didn't know that
yeah.
was smell.
And I'm very allergic to them. So.
Oh, no way. I didn't know you could be allergic to them. That's
Oh
wild.
yes.
Wow.
Yep,
Okay.
you can be allergic.
Goodness.
Yes.
So wait, you have
I'm allergic
roaches
to
there at the
everything though.
office too, like with the plants and stuff?
Um, well, they're just like I said, they're everywhere. We have there are dead roaches in the on the fourth floor of this building that I'm working in right now. It's an old building. There were more roaches at the old building I worked at because they had greenhouses attached to it, and greenhouses are the perfect environment for cockroaches.
Oh, so they like
Absolutely
the
perfect.
greenery is like the smell and mulch and stuff like that.
Damp, moist.
Okay.
Yeah. So the sewers is a place where they'll hang out in a lot. And food, like they will eat things like cardboard, cellulose. I mean, just, yeah.
Huh. Maybe because
And
it's
I'm
really
sure that
dry here, they're not so prevalent.
it's cold, too cold there.
Yeah, it's also super cold. Like, I hate the
Yeah.
cold, but we have to have these, like, the cold snaps we had this last week. We had, like, it was in the high 40s, and then we had a massive
Mhm.
cold front come in. We had, like, single digits again, which I hate, but we have to have that
Ugh.
in order to freeze off tick population and other bugs. Otherwise, if it's too warm through winter, the tick population just skyrockets and becomes a major issue. Which,
Yeah,
yeah,
unfortunately, ticks are always, and mosquitoes. Whenever
yeah,
it's warm, if it warms up even for like a day or two, we have mosquitoes. I
yeah.
mean, it's the South. I mean,
I didn't notice
we do
them
have
that much
freezing.
last year.
Oh,
Weirdly enough,
really?
usually I always get, like, they love me, and I always get
Isn't
bit.
up north like you guys have an abundance of things like mosquitoes and ticks?
Everything. Yeah. Just have everything. It's just weird.
Mm.
But I didn't notice them as much last year. And I don't know if it's because we had the really bad summer last year. So that might have
Oh.
had a, it just wasn't as humid for them. We didn't have
Was
rain
it
for
dry?
months. Yeah, we
Yeah, when
had
it's
months and
dry.
months without a single drop of rain.
There you go.
Hmm. Yeah, because they like the puddles too, so that probably had something to do with it. Like, I don't mind not having mosquitoes. I hate them. They love me and I hate them.
Mm.
And I get like the
Oh,
really, really
same.
big bad
Same.
welts from them.
Mm.
It's just miserable.
For me, it just depends, but yeah.
You
Oh.
know, the warmer it is too, mild climate rant, the warmer it is, the further the disease with them is going to carry too. Like West Nile isn't much of a thing here, but as the summers continue to be warmer, longer, and everything, it has been traveling this way. And same with
Yeah.
Lyme disease, because that was something on the East Coast area, Northeast,
My
and
whole
then it's
life I've,
slowly
yeah,
been
been,
getting closer and
yeah.
closer to here. It's still not a problem that we have, but it's you can see like over time the tracking of it just gets further and further spread across. So,
Mm-hmm.
yay,
Yes.
heat.
Yeah. And you tell people not to feed the deer in the neighborhood, but they still feed the deer.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. We didn't
Plants.
feed them in neighborhoods. Like my grandparents had a cabin in the mountains, and they would put out, they had feeders for birds and everything, but it was so remote up there. Like the deer were not human use at all. Like they're like, oh, an apple, but as soon as you like peek your head out the window, they were gone. So they weren't
Oh, ours are not like that.
habitualized. Oh yeah, the deer is still super skittish here. Unless you go, there's a lake, a Wallawa Lake, and the deer will just come right up to you. They got no problem. Like
No,
I had
that's
this like
bad.
5 point buck come right up to me, and I was just like, because I was a little kid, and I was just like, oh god, they're very big.
They're scary.
Yeah,
I don't want to be close to them because they have ticks.
yeah, they do. Yeah, deer ticks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a breed.
Gross.
Gross. So anyway,
Gross. I've definitely picked a few ticks off my body, but
I only ever had one when I was a little kid. But a
oh.
couple years ago, I had to pick one off my dog. I was like going on my way to school, and I was like goodbye, and I felt this little lump, and I was like, oh no, what is that? And I parted the fur, and there's this tick on him, and I was like, I'm gonna miss the bus. I'm like trying to pull this tick off. Yeah,
Yeah. They really freak me out because they have this like blood radar.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was I worked in a lab with a woman who like didn't want to kill anything. So there was like a weevil infestation. I don't know if you know what weevils are, these little bugs that eat grain. And so that's where we had all of our wheat seeds stored for processing various things for the lab.
Oh
And she
no.
wouldn't kill them. And we had
Oh.
a weevil infestation eating all of our samples. Like, what's wrong with you, lady?
Oh my god.
One day she came in, or she was there. I came in and I turned around and there's this like bug like running towards me. And I'm like, what is that? Like I swore, like I thought it was a tick, but it was bit. And
Ew.
I yelled and she goes, oh, it's a tick. I threw him in the trash can. I'm like, but you didn't kill it. You just threw it in the trash can. Like these things have blood radar. Like
It's gonna
he's
climb.
scenting me
It's
and
gonna
right
climb back out.
at
Flush
me.
it.
Yeah. Like,
Flush
what is
that thing.
wrong with you?
Gross. My
Put it down a sink with a disposal and
Yeah, seriously. A couple years ago,
set it on fire,
when I was at
drown it
school,
in
yeah,
formaldehyde. Yeah.
exactly. My boyfriend was like, he called me. I was at school, and he's like, I think I have a tick. I was like, okay, did you remove it? He's like, well, it's in the shower. I'm like, okay. I get home and it's chilling on the side of the shower. Still, I was like, why did you kill it? He's like, well, why would you look at it? I'm like, it's a tick. Flush it. Just
Oh my
remove it.
gosh.
Yeah. But like they're tricky too because you have to pull them off in a very specific way so the head isn't still lodged in your skin when you pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
Nasty little buggers.
Yeah. I've been lucky the ones that I've had to pull off like weren't on me for very long. They probably
Oh,
just,
that's good.
yeah, or they were still crawling around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I work in the field, there was this one location I worked at, a research station in Virginia, and one of the girls that I worked with, this was like during wheat harvest, and we were waiting for the combine to make its round back to us so that we could take the samples and load them onto a truck. And we're sitting there, and she's like picking at something, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And I look down, and she has a tick that she's picking the legs off of, like just all casually, like you pick blades of grass or something. And I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, just kill it."
Oh my god.
And she's like, "Well, now it can't walk anywhere." And I was like,
Okay, well, just
"That's
maybe
one way to
kill
do
it
it."
instead of like, yeah, just pulling it apart piece
But it
by
can
piece.
still bite.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it.
That's gnarly. That's gnarly. So,
You've been around a lot of ticks when you're just like casually plucking off their legs. Like,
yeah, that's gross. And not, no, that creeps me out. Nasty. So,
yeah,
with,
I guess back onto it.
yeah, I know. Well, we still had plants in there. That's totally fine. I mean, you're gonna be
Yeah.
out dealing with
Yeah.
plants and you have to deal with pests. So,
Yes, insects are always.
something back about that tomato. Like,
Mhm.
how would you go about trying to design a plant that can either attract or repel a bug of some sort or be resistant to it? Like,
So
is it
with
like a pheromone thing?
plants, it's an aromatic thing. When you mess with a tomato, it has that scent, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of forget what the scents are called, like terpenes, like something. Anyway, so they release this scent, and the way they figure out, like, they'll either through observation or through study, they'll have multiple, lines, breeds, varieties of tomatoes, and they can specifically study, in a controlled environment, or I guess they could probably quantitate it through, measuring sense, chromatography of some sort. I'm trying to like, I'm not really sure how they would do it for tomato, but the
What's
gist
chromatography
is
real
you
quick?
would chromatography. It's like another way to take measurements of like gases or liquids, spectroscopy, chromatography. Yeah,
Okay.
you can measure and you can actually identify the gas. Yeah, chromatography does gas, so you could oils anyway.
Okay.
By you have certain indicators, and whatever compound it is will give off like a specific mark for that compound. And yeah, a researcher who knows what they're looking for will say, "Oh yeah,"
Oh, okay.
And they can measure the concentration of that compound in that sample. So that would be another way that they could find, or identify which tomatoes have what. Or it could just be like an observational thing, put the plants in a controlled environment, put out, the pest, and then put in an equal amount or whatever of the pest's enemy. So like parasitic wasps, and when we say like a pest enemy, so like when you talk about beneficial insects, really is, and when you talk about plants, those are your beneficial insects. And some of them, like parasitic wasps or ladybugs, or when the plant is under stress, the plant gives off this scent, and that scent alerts plants, like nearby tomato plants, as well as like other insects, sort of this like symbiotic relationship. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but that scent alerts the other plants to give off that scent as well, which draws in those beneficial insects. They're like, "Oh, there's food there." So they go follow the scent, like, to find the food.
Plants talk to each other in a sense.
Yeah.
And people don't really think about plants as doing something like that. Like, I've seen or read about trees doing it, but I guess I never really thought about. Yeah, that's really.
And I think it's fungi, whatever, however. They
Fungi?
do too.
Yeah.
Like the mycelium is a very complex, network. I'm not really versed in that area, but the documentaries I saw were very interesting.
I know there's that really popular fungi one on Netflix, but I haven't watched it. But I've also seen like
I haven't either.
people were not also happy with it. Like other
Mm.
experts in the field, like they made it to what's the word where like what Discovery Channel does with Shark Week and they're like, ooh, bad, but these people made mushrooms like, ooh, look at these amazing things. They do all this other stuff that they actually probably don't do, but it was more of a causation without
Oh,
correlation thing.
yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
what's it?
I don't know. I
Stuff
saw it.
that's not peer reviewed or
Yeah. Like that type of thing.
actually proven.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of that in it, so I haven't watched it just because I saw in like this ecology group that these other fungi experts were not overly thrilled with it. I was like, oh,
That
okay.
happens. Like when you like trying to get science to be fun and out there, I think we just have the
Yeah.
wrong people trying to
It
make
totally is.
science
It totally is.
fun because yeah, you get these PhDs and like there's nothing wrong with having a PhD, but some PhDs are just really dry and they're so like have been
Yeah.
so into it that
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm kind of the same way. I'm not really the best communicator. I mean, I
Well,
didn't do any like studying for this at all. Just like, yeah.
yeah. Well, that's partially why I want to do this is to be able, because I know there is like that fundamental lack of being able to explain all the things because you get so involved in your studies and then everything that you know about it comes second nature to you, but you talking to somebody about it,
Mm,
they're going, you're saying a lot of words, but what do the words mean? And
right.
it's a thing that
Or in plant breeding. Like during my master's project, I had these what you call a mapping population. And so I had these parents, right? And I get so excited about my project that I'm talking to these like people about my parents this, my parents that, and they think I'm talking about my actual parents. And I'm like,
oh,
oh no, like I'm talking about this mapping population and the parents, one is like this and
like parent plants.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And there's another term, mapping population, where I'm like, yeah, everybody knows what a mapping population is.
So to me, mapping population, you have your parent plants and its offshoots of the diversity that comes from them. I feel like I've had someone explain this to me before, but it might
So a
have been
mapping
something different.
population, yeah, and a mapping population is used for multiple things. And I don't
Okay.
I don't really know if mapping populations are as popular anymore because they can do things like genome-wide association studies where they have all these different lines and they can run thousands of markers and analyze those. And markers are just these little like DNA snip blip that's like for this trait or that trait. And when it
Right,
goes into this, assay, it sort of lights up whether or not it has it.
right.
That's one way to identify traits rather than having to go through phenotyping. Phenotyping is like visually assessing, observing traits. But yeah, the mapping population that I had one parent that was known to have this resistance to powdery mildew. I had another parent that was known to not have resistance to powdery mildew. So one parent that would be covered in powdery mildew and one that wasn't under, you know, um, field conditions.
Hmm.
And so that those parents were crossed and the mapping population is what came out of that.
So you see how the result of that,
It
whether the
helped.
plants will take one side or the other, be resistant or not.
So what it helped with is that I had all these offspring from these parents, right? And so all these offspring I put out in the field, and then I would go out there on a regular basis and rate the plants for disease pressure. And I would take that data back with me, plug it in, and then in the lab, I would take the DNA from those and I would run molecular markers and, look for AB types, heterozygotes, like whatever, right? And I would take that data and add the field data to it to see which markers were associated with resistance.
Oh, cool.
And so that's like in a nutshell, although that's not, I guess it's still kind of hard to understand, but those markers would associate to a gene. And then going with that field data, that observational data, to put that together and say, oh, look at this marker is highly associated with resistance.
Yeah, it's like cross-referencing.
Right. And it helps you to determine which genes or alleles or sections of the DNA are associated with that resistance. Mm-hmm. When you identify those, then you try to get as close to the actual gene as possible. And you develop a marker for that you can implement in other lines, mm-hmm. because usually your population will also have some elite, or what we call they call them elite varieties, or things that are, plants that are grown widely by farmers. And so they're easy to deploy. Like your results are easy to deploy in research. So from that, I was able to identify a handful of markers that were associated with disease resistance and run that on the entire breeding population in this program that I was working in. And that's how we were able to identify, like, oh, well, this plant has it, this one doesn't. This has it, this one doesn't. And it just helped us gain a better idea of the genetic makeup overall, but also to have specific resistance against powdery mildew.
So I have a side question about how you try to grow plants to have specific markers, or if farmers are mass producing a plant, it's important to introduce genetic diversity back into it, right? So like we don't end up with a banana that has no diversity, so if it gets one pest, it just wipes out bananas.
Yeah. So wheat is generally, I think it's pretty diverse, and it's pretty easy to breed. Wheat is a bit more of what we call promiscuous.
Okay.
Grasses tend to be more promiscuous with cross-pollinating. Soybean, so I think, yes, there is, when you get into breeding, there is some narrowing of genetic diversity because you're identifying, oh, this line has the best yield, this line has great disease resistance, this line has this, and you try to put it together. And eventually you do kind of narrow down your resistance. Soybean is well known to have a genetic bottleneck. And that's because, varieties came here from China, I don't know, X hundreds of years ago. And you can trace the majority of soybean lineage in the United States back to, I think, 4 or 6 varieties. It's really, really narrow.
Wow.
It's really narrow. And the group I work with here now, genetic diversity is a very important aspect to what they do. So they make really complicated crosses with, so glycine max is soybean that is grown for consumption of sorts. Glycine soja, or is it soja? Anyway, so there's max and soja.
Okay.
I hope I'm getting this right.
That's okay. So
the wild type.
This one and soybean that one.
Yeah, so the wild type soybean, which I believe is just soja, that is a very different looking soybean to what we see, or what you might see in a farm if you Google soybean. Soja is acts very much like other legumes, and that it has a creeping sort of climbing habit, where cultivated soybean doesn't. It's just a plant that stands up straight, doesn't fall down, branches, and it stays to itself.
Probably grow in our garden, right?
Yeah, soybeans will do. Mm-hmm. the wild soybeans will do that. And soybeans that are grown in a greenhouse or a growth chamber will also they act different. So they do these what we call wide crosses by cross pollinating, a wild soybean type to, like an elite variety or a variety that's a cultivar that farmers grow already. So when we say elite, and then from there starts the hard process. So when they do those wide crosses, it's not really like, yes, you can introduce some genetic markers like running the DNA to look for specific traits, but because of that wide cross and the varying differences in how they grow, on the ground versus standing up straight, the first couple of years, you're just going to plant all that seed to see which types are standing up straight.
Oh, okay.
And that's how that process will begin. And then from there, you'll select that plant. So you'll be looking, out of all these plants, you're selecting for an individual plant. And that plant, you'll harvest it, grow it again, and you'll keep, because each time it's self-pollinating.
Uh-huh.
And when you pick that plant, the hope is that the next generation, you're going to see, each seed is different. You're going to see differences, but you're going to keep picking the best one. Right. And that is very much how like the original plant breeding, genetic modification took place in the Fertile Crescent. They found this wheat head that had the best, fattest seed, and they selected that one to be the one that they grew out for the next season. And they kept picking the best plants that had the traits that they liked, and sort of the same thing.
Makes sense.
We still do that today.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think, like you mentioned before, how genetically modifying is like a huge umbrella of things, whether it's like selective breeding like that. I think the general populace probably thinks genetically modifying is inserting and changing genetics as someone
genetic engineering.
Yeah, they were upset about what were they talking about? It was genetically modified apples, and they didn't want some genetically modified apple that would have some sort of fish gene in it, and I had to be like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And that's a very weird thing to say. Why would you're not modifying anything to have some, like, you can't have cross species modifications like that.
No.
You're not gonna have a soybean wanting some property of a wheat. It doesn't work in that sense.
So, no, not in that way. But we can search, like you can do like high tech stuff, like searching, since we have like databases where we know the genomes of wheat and soybean and stuff. And you can look across the various species for a specific trait, and you can see if that trait has been like mapped and sequenced. And you can look for similarities in the sequence and compare it to other species or other plants. And that's something that's been done for a while now. And you sort of like, I guess what you say, like a cross-reference to see. Yeah. Because those genes, those letters or proteins, they encode for something very specific. And just like humans have, genes that encode for things very specific. Not all of us have the same, but some of us do. It's like a gene for breast cancer.
Right.
Yeah. So, but no, you can't just like
I know. It's just
cross a wheat and a soybean plant, or you can't take a fish egg and insert pollen grains into it.
That's work absolutely not. Yeah.
No.
Within species, of course, but not like my favorite apple in the world is a cross species plant up here that they made. Is the best freaking apple I've ever had in my life. I love it. It took them
I'm
like
not
20
really an
something
apple fan,
years
but
to. I I was when I was a kid, and then I didn't really eat them forever, and I recently have a newfound love for them. Like there's something about this cosmic crisp apple that they made.
Cosmic Crisp.
Yeah, it's a
That
cosmic crisp.
sounds.
It's made in Washington.
It's a good name.
Was it made from UW or WSU? I can't remember. I think it was with one of the colleges. Um, but it took them like 20 something years to get this apple crossbreed to grow right and how they want it. And it's only in the last couple of years that they started distribution of it. So it's probably something that it's in stores right now. So it's probably something that eventually, as it gets bigger and more farmers are farming it, or
Yeah.
do you farm
And that's
it?
another reason why I like row crops, because I think you can release a variety in as soon as 5 years in
Mhm.
row crops, but apples you have to grow a freaking tree. Like
Yeah, and you have to wait for the tree to grow, and then you have to wait for the tree to mature enough to
to
actually eat the fruit
produce.
and
Yeah.
produce it and then
Yeah.
eat it. Because if it's like a first production of it, it might not be all that great, and you wait for it to mature to the right age to produce fruit that you actually want to eat. Yeah.
Right. And that's where in plants like that, genetic engineering comes in handy, because you sort of bypass the it's easier to get past those like early stages.
Hmm.
But yeah, I know that research took a little while, and my assumption is that, breeding trees takes longer, because
I
I
would
mean,
imagine.
you can't grow two crops per season. Like,
No. And you need more space
mm-mm.
because you can't grow them as close as you would with, soybeans or wheat or anything. They have to have a certain
Mm-hmm.
diameter around them. Yeah,
Right.
it's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
They're amazing
Yeah.
things. If you ever get a chance, I still say if you don't like apples, you should just try it once. They are
I'll look for them. I'll look for them next time I'm in a grocery store. I'll look for Cosmic
and they're
Crisp.
amazing. I don't know what it is about these apples, but they last so long in the fridge too. Like I know you're not supposed to put stuff in the fridge, but they last way longer than any other apple that I've ever bought. I love them.
Is that the one that you can cut and it doesn't brown, like it doesn't
Yes.
oxidize?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So then places like McDonald's don't have to put it in that like preservative juice when they
Yeah.
package them.
I've had those. I don't. Those things are weird. I've had them before, and they're just like weird little slimy things. I'm like, ugh,
Yeah, I no, they just look
bizarre.
gross. Yeah. And then it's in more plastic. So
Yeah,
try to avoid packaging.
as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
definitely up here. This year, Washington started. There's no more plastic bags and stuff.
Oh wow.
So
It'll
yeah,
take a while for that to happen here, but
yeah. Well, it started at there's a city here that has been doing it for years, and they just expanded it to the whole state, which is fine. I mean, it makes me use all my reusable bags that I had anyway, so now I actually have to.
yeah. I've been doing pickup orders at the store, and one reason I want to stop is because of all the plastic bags. I mean, I do reuse them as trash bags, and I mean, I continue to use them as bags sometimes in the
Yeah.
mornings if I'm just like not organized. I'll throw all my stuff in a Target bag, and then that's like my bag that I'm taking to work with me.
So are those bags that they have there? Because when they switched here, all the bags suddenly are like this really heavy duty plastic, and they're
Yeah,
meant
it's
to be
thicker.
reused for like 200 times or something like that. Like they're
I
really
don't
thick,
know
heavy
about
duty.
that, but I know that they do feel heavier sometimes. Not always. I don't always get the same bags,
Okay,
but
I just noticed
yeah,
like on the bottom like of the bags it'll say reuse this bag X amount of times. It just kind of depends on the store now
yeah,
because they still
yeah.
give you that bag when you order pick up groceries or if you forget to bring your bags to the store. They just have these ones now, but you also have to pay 8 cents for bags.
At your Target,
Hmm. Everywhere.
maybe it's the same. I'll have to,
Yeah.
do I might have one of those bags with me. I'm literally like a bag lady.
I was just gonna say bag
I
lady.
do. I do have a Target bag. I
Yeah,
do.
it
Now, what
sounds
does it
amazing.
say on it? it just says warning, avoid danger of suffocation.
Might not be.
Oh, this bag is 40% recycled content. Please return this bag for recycling. Recycle is clean and dry. So I guess our North Carolina Targets don't have your fancy bags.
Yeah. It sounds like way crinklier than a normal bag. It looks heftier, but
and my kittens love these. I try not to let them get them because then they'll destroy them because they're kittens, and it's like their ultimate goal right now in life is just to destroy everything.
Yeah, as they do.
They took my collection of tissue paper and shredded it.
Naughty Meow.
Yeah.
Just get them a cardboard box. They'll be happy, right?
They have 3.
Oh, well, maybe they need 4.
No.
Okay.
No.
I tried cats. I'm sorry. So tell me,
breeding.
as we wrap it up a little bit, what's the specific project that you're working on right now? Like you said before we went live, you switched groups. Was it? Or teams?
I switched. Yeah. So within my research unit, we have 4 labs and or groups, and each principal investigator, PI, they have a specific focus. Before I switched, I was in a breeding lab where we were breeding soybeans specifically for seed content, or so protein, oil, and the components that go with that. So the with soybean, there's an inverse relationship with yield and protein content. And yeah, so I mean, a lot of times when you breed plants, like tomato is a perfect example that was bred over the years for sustained shelf life. Well, when they did that, they had an inverse relationship with taste. And so when you're breeding and you're looking at, oftentimes you end up, there's like a trade-off. And so with soybean, that's been the trade-off: protein content up, yield goes down, yield up, protein content goes down. And in a way that does make a lot of sense because it takes the plant, it needs more resources to produce more protein content in their seed. Does that make sense? I kind of like to think of it as like concentrated urine.
Okay.
And it's because the more resources you have, right, the more you drink, your urine becomes lighter in color and less concentrated.
Yeah.
So the less resources that a soybean plant has, it's not going to produce as much yield. So we've also seen some studies where when a plant or a high protein plant is under drought stress, it'll produce smaller seeds, but that seed will be, so the yield will go down because of that small seed size, but the protein content will stay high. So it's sort of it's, what do you do? So one of the goals is to be able to break that barrier. And by doing that, you do have to introduce new genetics oftentimes. And because that helps to sort of introduce possible genetics to break that relationship.
Okay, so try to breed out so you don't have to have a high yield,
that trade-off,
low protein, and try to equalize it more.
High yield, high protein.
Yeah.
And high, and then we also look at specific oil contents too. And I haven't reviewed any of that in a while, so I can't tell you specifically which. Did I say? Oh, I pronounce oil weird, don't I? I'm sorry.
No, no. I'm just thinking what's the purpose of oil content?
So soybean oil is used in a lot of things. And so that's where seed composition for soybean is also important. So a lot of the protein, we look for feeding livestock, and there are other uses for it. But the soybean oils we use in food. And then the type of oil also helps to determine shelf life.
Oh.
And that's where that's where our like chromatography comes into play, because then we can analyze how much oil is present in that line.
Okay. Cool. I guess I should probably pay attention to food packaging if it says soybean oil.
Soybean oil is in everything. It's in everything. Soybeans are in everything. Yeah. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So the oil itself is not the oil doesn't contain genes. It's like carbon and what else?
It's not like plant.
Yeah, it's a carbon product. So there's it's literally like carbon, what else is it? Oxygen, the double bonds and single bonds. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that part in chemistry?
Well, I remember bonds and types of bonds. But
so with the oils, I think they draw like the yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there's like oleic. So oleic, they call them acids. Oleic acid, stearic. What's the other one? I should know all this. Linoleic. And so depending on how much of one, like I'm forgetting which one has a low shelf life and it goes rancid really quickly. So we also want to have our seed composition when you breed a plant for that seed composition, you want to have as little of that specific oil as possible.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Because the end product, the value will decrease if it has too much of that shelf unstable oil.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that kind of makes food really complicated to think about.
It is very, and there
going on.
Yes, okay. Yes, it is very complicated. So usually a grower will be growing a specific type of that crop. And the field itself, generally, at least I know here on the East Coast, like they're not just growing one variety. They typically have a mix of varieties because of pest and disease pressure and abiotic stress. So they don't want to have, what is it called again? A mono. I should know this, but they don't want a monoculture. It's against it's not helpful for their bottom line. It's not going to help them make money if this one, they get this heavy disease pressure or insect pressure one year and it wipes out their plants. So they want to have as diverse a field. Yeah. Banana is a weird thing. When you get into those trees are just a whole other thing. Like they're much more complicated.
Yeah, I just know there's this thing people, like obviously I'm not a plant biologist or anything of like that, but just reading some things that it pops up once in a while about bananas being a monoculture and the problem with that. But
yeah,
I mean, different types of bananas, but I guess not. Like
there are.
I don't. Or if
there
we're just
are,
talking about like just
and
the
I
yellow
think
bananas is the problem.
Cavendish or something. It's grown widely, I think, because of its type. It doesn't have seeds. It's a clone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you have, let's think of what other things are clones, right? What other things are clones? When you take a cutting from your plant and you propagate it, that's a clone, isn't it? Anyway.
Well, it's still from the same plant. You're just growing a new plant from the exact same plant, so it still has the same characteristics of the plant that you took it from.
Yeah.
Right? It's an offshoot of the exact plant.
Yeah. I'm not really sure, so I'm not like a tree person, but trees I think are often grafted, and they, and when I think of cloning in labs, I think of you can grow. I have grown a potato in a petri dish in a lab at university. I have done that.
I mean, if you leave a potato in
And
the
that is
cover
one way
long enough, it'll start putting out shoots and you get more.
and potatoes are clones. Yeah, that's another cloned crop. And the Irish potato famine is a perfect example of what can go wrong when you have a monoculture. Corn, I think there was a corn, yeah,
Is it only
there was a
corn? There's
corn
like
problem
so
back, I
many
think, in the
types of corn.
70s. Rust. Yeah, right now, corn, I don't think we'll ever have a problem with that
So there's like
again because
hundreds of types
mainly
of
the
corn or
corn that,
something, right?
and yeah, they're hybrids that are grown these days. So it's, yeah, they have all, yeah.
Those
We don't,
colorful ones
corn
are
we should,
hybrids too?
the land, I think they call them land races or heirloom types. Sorry, I gotta like find my charger. And those, I don't really know so much about those, but
And I know I've never seen one other than pictures, and I really want to eat one. They're pretty.
they are pretty. I think you can buy them if you go
Never
to like
seen one.
organic sections will probably have them. Your farmers market will probably have them because those are like the heirloom, they call them heirloom varieties. So
I wonder if you cook those, if they lose their color, like with the colorful beans, because there's like purple beans and white beans and the green beans. But
because
when you
it's
cook
just the
them, they all
skin that
turn
has the color.
Yeah, they all turn the same color after they're cooked. So I wonder
Yeah,
if
because
corn
the
does the same.
inside of the bean is the same color and the inside of the corn is probably the same color. Yeah. I've never really, that's not really my theme.
My goal this year is try to find colorful corn.
Yeah, where the starch, I guess, the inside of it
Like I've
is
seen
the
like
same
blue
color.
ones, and those ones have like purples and all sorts of things. It's just so cool.
Yeah, you know, I'm trying to. This is like I haven't been in school for so long, but in my advanced plant breeding and genetics class, we did a little thing on color in corn, and yeah, how awesome! Like Barbara McClintock, because she was like the person that discovered jumping genes in corn.
What's a jumping gene?
Oh Lord, I shouldn't have even said.
It's okay if you can't remember.
They're a basic rundown. Oh my gosh, if you get like comments and stuff, if anyone watches, I'm very rusty. I didn't do any preparation for this. They're just genes that'll like sort of horizontally transfer themselves, so they have like codes on them that allow them to just kind of like move to different locations. And yeah, and for whatever reason, like corn is still viable even though it can do that. So
I have a
yeah,
last question before we end up having to wrap. We're at an hour, and I promise not to take you from work too long. I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. I'm having fun.
Okay.
And I'm here like on my own terms. So like,
oh, okay. So it's not like official.
Yeah.
Doing things.
No,
okay.
No.
I don't feel as bad.
Yeah. No.
Don't feel as bad. With the soybeans, do they have a problem? Are soybeans very temperature? What's the word like?
Yes. They have heat.
They have
heat
problems
stress.
with like they have to have like
Yes.
type of temperature. So
yes.
Is that something that you can work on breeding for them to
Yep.
be able to be more heat tolerant? Because I know that's something we're going to obviously
Yes.
need for our future of the planet.
Yes. So the lab I work in now is a heavy physiology lab. So it's different from breeding. And so right now they have several studies going on, and one of them is heat stress. So there actually is an experiment going on right now in growth chambers, because that's where we can, control the environment better.
Right.
And one of them is set to almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, I don't tolerate that.
So when I have to go in there, when I have to go in there and water,
oh no,
like It's hot.
Oh,
And I come out and I'm all red and like, even if I'm only in there for a few minutes, because it's hot and humid in there.
yeah.
So like we're actually running dehumidifiers in our growth chambers right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so if it's so humid in there, would you run into a problem of is it what's the one that likes humid? Is it powdery mildew that likes humidity?
Thankfully, because it's a controlled environment, we don't have
Okay.
that problem. So if I were to, and like another sort of like thing with our growth chambers, if you're in the field, you cannot go to the growth chamber afterwards. You have to go home, shower, change your clothes before you go back. And even when you
Decontaminate
go
yourself.
in, right. Even when you go in, like you're supposed to wear a lab coat just to make sure. Yeah. If I mess with the plants that I have here in the lab, like house plants, and I'm growing here, like if I discover like a pest, my terrarium, if I find a pest on them, like I can't go to the growth chamber. Like I live like 35 minutes from work. So I have to ask someone else, hey, so whenever I know I'm going to go into the, what we call the phytotron, is what it's called here at NC State. I try to avoid dealing with my plants. If I know I'm going in there in the afternoon. In the morning, I go there very first. That's the first stop I make on my way into work. But yeah, we do heat stress. Heat stress, flood tolerance, drought tolerance.
Yeah, those are
all things that we study here and are looking. So the physiology side, they're looking more at the physiological aspect of it. Why is happening, and it's much more different. For me, like as breeding, we would go to the field and like, oh look, it's dry here. So we grow our drought tolerant or our drought studies in a like sandier soil because obvious reasons, sand doesn't hold water. Right. And it's easy to walk into that field on a day where it's hot and dry, and you can say, oh, look at that line. That line is actually like has some turgor. When plants are all limp, they don't have any turgor pressure. And so you see that plant is like happy and standing up straight, where the others just look, like they're all sad. Yeah. They look like you're a peace lily when you forget to water it. Like melted. They're not quite that bad. But yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Or yellowing leaves. Yeah. And so when I go to a field and they're doing physiology, I'm, the breeding aspect of my job for the last decade or whatever has been, like just look at the phenotypes, and from replication and like section of field to section of field, you can see, which line, and you'll see it over and over again. Oh, look, it's that line again. And you walk, 4 fields later. Oh, I bet that's that line again. And sure enough, you go look in your book at your little map or whatever. And yeah, that's the heat tolerant or the drought tolerant one. And then why is it drought tolerant here?
So and then the ones that don't show that perkiness in them, do you just yank those plants and you end up growing more of the next ones to just keep it going?
In the breeding side of things, yes, but in the physiology side of things, no. They still sample, and they run a lot of data, a lot of data, like a lot. And then they even have one of the technicians here. She is the only one in our research unit that knows how to use this drone, and so she flies a drone around to see, and get data that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's pretty quick way to go through and see everything.
It is. And I need to freshen up on that. I don't have a license to fly a drone, so. Sorry?
Oh, it's like big enough that you have to have a license for it, because they have like small ones that you don't. Okay. Those are
and because of research, we have to do, and we're federal, we have to do everything by the book as much as possible.
Okay, so you're government, not private sector.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing in breeding.
I think I meant to ask that, and I totally forgot.
Yeah,
I thought about it earlier.
And in research in general, public sector is very different from the private sector, and we all kind of, in one way or another, work together as an entire industry, all with the same goal. But at the USDA, the lines that we release are available to the public. Anybody can use the varieties we release, or the lines, whatever you want to call them, we release for their own research or to implement them in their breeding program. Because our overall goal is to strengthen, the genetic background of soybean to increase yield and availability to
So the more people that
the
can help,
people.
the better it is.
Yes. And also we kind of do the work that is the hard work that's not profitable for a big company, like a seed company to do. Because research is expensive. You don't get a lot of return. And so people complain about patents and things. Well, I mean, it takes money, a lot of money, but the work that we do is paid for by the people. And so our results are available to the people. And anyone can use that, including the seed company that can take their, patented trait and plug it into our varieties, because in the end, that saves them money, because they're not the ones doing all this. And they, and they do help fund research. Seed companies do. Yeah.
That's cool.
Spend a lot of money on research because for them, research is not profitable. And I know it kind of sounds bad, but if it were up to companies, they're only going to do what's most profitable. So our food system would probably collapse because it's not in their interest.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, so there is a sort of balance between public sector and private sector. And so I don't have any hate towards the private sector. To me, I feel more satisfaction being in the public sector because I feel like I'm, doing good for the people.
Yeah. From an outside perspective, because I work for nothing, private sector is the ooh and the ah, and the public sector is more like, hi, we're helping. Look, this is useful for everybody.
Yeah. And in the public sector, we do have to do a lot with less. So, there's never enough money. And I mean, again, research, you're spending.
Get work to the bone, and there's not enough there. Yeah.
There's never enough.
There's never enough. What makes the world go round? We need to.
Right. You think that food would be, the people working in agriculture would be paid well, and that's not the case at all. And that's
really a problem across a lot of industry, STEM industry too, is that there's just not the proper amount of funding and work going into it that it should have and deserves to have.
Right. Yeah, I kind of wish they would again celebrate scientists more, and there'd be more science, advocates, more public figures. Why do we all have to look up to Neil deGrasse Tyson? There's plenty of other people who can talk good science. And specifically about their field.
And why is it always a physicist that is up there talking about everything? It's always a damn physicist. No offense to being a physicist. I spent years in physics. But they're not the golden child to explain every other sector of science. It's just, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, but I just, to me, plant breeding in general, it's just a lot of common sense to me about it. And there's a lot of overlap, just genetics in general, when you talk about, monocultures and how a monoculture can put, it'll put a disease or something under high pressure or give it more sort of this, I'm going to try and take that back a little bit. If it is susceptible to, a disease, that disease can just have a field day and just wipe it out. But there's in plant breeding, that's another thing, job security. There's always, just how viruses and pests work for humans, there's always going to be a new disease in a crop.
Right.
Always, these are ever evolving systems and organisms. But so job security too is great for plant breeding because, look at the environment itself, the
Yeah.
drought, heat, temperature
Well, that's
fluctuations,
like the
like,
basic of life, essentially, isn't it? Everything came from bacteria were always here. That's going to happen. So you're always going to have some
mhm,
bacteria or virus, and it's always going to be something new evolving, and
yeah.
just,
And
yeah.
we're just trying to keep ahead of that curve, basically, in breeding, like just trying to stay ahead of it. And, it's a community that um, collaborates with each other very well because, like there still is like the stem rust issue over in the Middle East, I think, with wheat. And we have researchers here that travel frequently to Pakistan and to other countries over there that are
Oh,
wheat growing. And yeah, I think it was Northern Africa where they're having
yeah,
stem rust.
yeah.
Anyway,
I know Africa was
yeah.
having something. Oh my
Yeah.
god,
So
and
we
they have
have
massive issues with
researchers
locusts
here,
too. Oh,
yeah, in Raleigh that go,
that's super cool.
over there and help and are a part of, and it's actually a larger community than just USDA being over there. There's also, I think, Summit and other big, public funded organizations that are also helping with that.
Mhm.
And
Well,
it's like, yeah,
it's not country specific, obviously. Like you gotta have other countries that are going there, and like
yes,
everybody's trying to figure this out together collectively. You might just have
yes,
the more minds
because
working on it, different viewpoints you're gonna have to solve
diseases
it.
don't have borders.
Yeah, man, did we know
Yeah, just
that?
like we saw with coronavirus, same thing with like a fungus.
Yeah,
And that's why you have customs, when you go to different countries, because especially, yeah, you don't
right,
want to bring in a disease unexpectedly. And
right. Well, and there's
yeah,
food.
it's,
They don't. Some countries don't let you transport certain types of food and things too.
yeah, some countries just have a complete
Like
ban on
even
being
counties.
imported.
There's counties here in Washington where you can't transport apples. I mean, this is apple state, but you can't transport certain apples because it's apple
It
worms
puts
or
the rest
something.
of
Yeah,
the
that
population
they're
at risk.
quarantined. It's
Yeah.
quarantine. Yep.
Hmm. Yeah. And the USDA also has agencies that do that, as well as state agencies. They, yeah, have their own programs. And it's, yeah, our food system is really complex. And,
I feel like it's easily toppable too, like to take it down a notch if we just have drastic changes to the environment that can hit multiple types of plants, crops, whatever at once, it's going to cause a massive problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, forget about supply chain,
Yeah, screw the
right?
supply chain. If you don't have the supply, there's no chain to even talk about it.
Right, right. So having the food and the food production, that's, yeah. And there's a whole there are entire like university classes that are devoted to nothing but food production.
Huh.
Like, and even a crop. Like I believe there's a soybean production class or a wheat production class, or yeah.
But
Like
there's got to be some universities that are offering specific things like that if it's in their specialty. Like I'm sure there's probably some
NC State
apple
is a
stuff.
huge breeding program, and I'm sure Washington does too. Yeah, I mean, I believe almost every state has a land grant university, and where there's a land grant university, there's agriculture.
WSU has a whole agricultural.
There's your land grant
When I
university.
was looking at colleges to go to for a second degree, and what their environmental stuff was, WSU has a big agricultural environmental degree. Yeah, isn't it cool?
Yeah, it
It's
was.
smack in the middle of agriculture country too, so that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, yeah, those are really, really good resources. And those universities, they are part of your state's extension and cooperative research office. And those are great resources for anyone in this state, anyone and everyone, if whether you have like,
Right.
um, yeah, for your garden, your house plants, your pantry, shelf life of foods and stuff, like yeah,
Mhm.
your extension office can answer all sorts of questions.
So I had never heard of what an extension
It's an
office
amazing
was
resource and it's
until you told
free.
me. I never knew
Yeah,
that. I've never
it's
heard
a
of one.
fantastic resource.
So what?
Yeah,
So does the
and it's
extension
one
office
that
like
it's often overlooked.
you call and ask them a question, they'll be able to like put you in contact with like the right people to answer the question. Is that what it does?
Usually, if they don't themselves know, they'll probably either send you to their website, because a lot of like that's for me my first like search. My Google search will be okay, for example, fungus gnats, house plants, extension. I include extension, or more specifically NCSU, the university, or you can do whatever university, and a page will come up that'll be for that specific problem. And that's actually how I learned more about fungus gnats, because so many people had problems with them and I didn't really understand. Yeah. And yeah, it tells you all about it, how to prevent it. It's right there. There are people you can contact, but I would say Google and look for your local extension office or your state's university. And even the other states, like some states have more funding and are able to do better. Or have, like Florida has an entire page, I believe, devoted to greenhouse production for plants.
Oh,
for
cool.
tropicals, because that's a big industry in Florida.
Yeah. They're about as tropical as gonna be getting here, right?
Yeah, and they have light requirement guides for different types of plants for greenhouse production. Yeah, I mean and pest guides and
this year, because last year I
and
had
that's all from Florida. Yeah,
from the university, but I had a problem with outdoor plants because of the heat wave. So this year I've decided I'm going to get my porch is wide enough and big enough that I can put a little greenhouse out there. And so I can put all my plants in there. It's my own little experiment to see if I can try to keep down the pest issue with them, because we had really bad spider mites because it was so dry. It was so dry here. So if I could put them in the greenhouse and keep a bucket of water. Okay, do tell.
Yeah. So the only thing with the greenhouse, just to think about closing them in.
Well, it has
stuff
like
can still get in. Spider mites are actually, and spider mites can enter through there.
And those teeny tiny.
And then they can get stuck in there. But spider mites will fly. Yeah. They can float in the air and come in through window screens.
Yeah, I did read that. But my thinking is that if I can keep it in a contained space and put like a big bucket of water in there to try to keep the humidity level up in there, because spider mites are less prone when the humidity is high.
Yeah, they don't like high humidity. It kind of slows them down.
That's my master plan, is to try to have some humidity in there.
To create a humid environment. And closing, a bucket of water and closing it in, that give it a go.
That's my plan. And
I've never tried that before.
A porch screen, because it's a south facing porch, so we get lots of sun. So I'm gonna put a porch screen there too, so get the morning sun, and then pull it down when it's in the heat of the day, and then it can have a little bit later when the sun's going down too. Can try to control that element of heating it as well. I'm experimenting this year.
Try it. Yeah. A shade cloth even for like the heat of the day.
Yeah.
I love shade cloths.
I'm trying to figure this out, trying to be my goal this year is to be a better plant person instead of just being like, you're in a pot, grow.
Oh, you just want to like be able to produce more food.
Yes.
I do. So you're just, farming in a pot.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
you got to troubleshoot.
It works. I've been doing it. I just need to expand what I'm doing and be able to control it better and the elements better. Yeah. Like I'm trying to be
I used to only grow peppers and I kind of stopped. Peppers can be fantastic, but when it gets too hot, they also stop producing.
My peppers ended up, they were weird. So I had grew some green bell peppers and they were little, like tiny. The heat and I just stunted them, and then the plant died. But I was growing what are the little hot ones?
Serranos, jalapenos.
Oh yeah, I was growing jalapenos and sriracha peppers. At least it was labeled sriracha. I don't know what the actual thing is called, but I was growing both of those. But they were so weird. They kept growing, and then when it got really hot, they stopped growing. When it cooled down again, they started growing like crazy. but they
Yep.
didn't actually grow and start to turn until it was fall. And I'm like, oh no, the frost is here. And
Yeah. So what
like,
you
oh my
need
God.
to look at is, yeah. So in the heat, right? The highest like heat of the summer, because for me, same thing with peppers. I'll start off great, and then when it gets really hot, July, they slow down, and they're just sort of like taking a little break because they got to focus. The plant has to focus on staying alive, right,
Yeah.
rather than fruit production. Um, and what it does produce isn't very good. But when you look for varieties to grow, you should look at how many days it takes to harvest.
Yeah. And I looked with the
Because
little
for your
statement,
zone,
like it shouldn't have taken, like they were way out of the range for it. Like I started them really early too. And they just,
mm-hmm.
because we had, it was like all of like the last half of June through July, start of August, that it was just completely miserable.
Too hot,
So,
yeah, too hot. Oh, yeah, fruits. They're not happy. They're not gonna flower, and yeah,
yeah, no, it was,
yeah. If for something like that, you want to have them in like optimal conditions. And even, I mean, I'm in the south, and yeah, I won't have peppers for like almost 2 months, and then come fall, but my fall lasts a lot longer than
yeah.
yours. So
Ours is
like, I'll
short.
get a lot of peppers in November.
Ours is short.
Yeah.
Well, ours is, well, I would say it's short, but it's so all over the place here too. Like December
Hmm.
1st of last year was 50 degrees. It should not have been
Yeah.
like that here.
We were in the 80s, like in late December.
Oh no, we should have
Christmas, I
had
think, was pretty
snow.
warm.
It should have been snow.
Yeah.
Usually it's snowing by the middle of November, but it's just so unpredictable and things are just expanding. It's weird. I don't
Yeah.
know if you saw the temperature charts that I was making comparing
I
the years.
did.
And if you look at the last year, there's so much more orange and red and dark red than the previous. It's just wild.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We can't
It's
control the weather. So the
no.
plant, yeah.
We have to make
It's,
the plants adaptable to it, and
yeah.
as it gets more and more unstable, it's yeah. I don't know. There's that's a thing.
It's a giant rabbit hole that's easy to go down, and I love it.
Yeah, rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Plant breeding is, yeah.
Yeah, there's
It's a very complex thing. Yeah, our food system is very complex. A lot of people don't realize just how involved it is and how much work goes behind the food that is
yeah.
served at their table or
One
it's sold at their stores. It's a lot of
yeah, I
work.
was looking
Same
at
thing with your house, not house plants, but the horticulture, like your garden plants.
yeah.
Those are often bred too.
Right. Well, and I was looking at like the important, well, I say important. What people really, really love to indulge in. Wine, like wine country down in California, is massively affected by the drought and the wildfires because then it soaks up that smoke affects the flavor of the grapes, which affects the flavor of your wine. So there's going to be whole years where the wine might so like just completely suck. It's going to suck.
Yeah.
They are saying
I don't drink
last year.
wine, so I don't really care.
Yeah.
But I know, yeah, the
Yeah,
industry itself. Yeah.
it's in trouble. And then
Hmm.
I was reading about climate change and coffee beans, and
Yep.
they were
That's a problem.
the scientists were working on teams and mapping out how different conditions were going to affect the regions because most was it like 70% of coffee beans are Arabic, or it's not Arabic.
Arabic?
That I didn't think it was Arabic.
Yeah.
It was like slightly different than that, just ever so slightly. But I don't know.
Oh.
I'm just like, just give me the coffee. I don't give a shit. But
Yeah.
where they're very specifically grown, like they are the majority of the market, but they're also the most finicky with temperature changes. So as
Hmm.
there's like whole regions that are no longer going to be able to produce, and they take years for them to be able to grow right to be viable to actually take the beans from. So it's like
Are they shrubs or trees? I'm not like, again, that's another one of those where it takes years,
yeah, it's like
years
it's
and
like
years
15 years that they
to
have
have
to
a crop.
plan ahead. And
Yeah.
so they have to look at all these scenarios and
Olives.
olives. Yeah, that's for sure
Yeah.
too. Yeah. It's
Yeah, so any food you get from a
chocolate.
tree or a shrub, yeah, chocolate, they're you're gonna have a harder, it's
So you really have to
yeah.
plan way ahead with figuring out how plants are going to handle rising heat and how the climates that
Mm-hmm.
they're already in, and that they're stuck in these climates, and how they're going to have to move to completely new regions in the world to be able to keep growing these things.
Yeah, and is that region, have the infrastructure, or it's there? Yeah,
because I saw some of these, like they had different, like if it raised by 1.5°C, and then if the temperature, the global temperature raised by 2°C, and then 3°C, and where they said, well, it's grown here, like it was grown in pockets of Africa, it can't grow there anymore. You have to grow it in Southeast Asia now. So do they have the
and that's
means
only
to grow it over there?
Yeah, do they have the means? Do they actually have the soil? Like, because
Yeah.
soil composition is very important.
Yeah,
like,
it has to be really
you
acidic.
can't just throw some seeds on a rock and
Yeah.
expect it to grow.
It's not a pine. It doesn't grow anywhere.
Yeah. I mean,
Pines grow on rocks here all the time.
and stuff like, those trees and shrub crops is, what orchard crops, I guess is what you would call them. You can't, it's not like you can just say, oh, this was a bad season, I'm gonna plow up the ground and go move them over here. The tree is there. Yeah,
is
those
there. And it's a chunk of land. It's a chunk.
Yeah,
you can't just move a whole orchard.
Yeah, and oranges, they've been having citrus greening. Yeah, those.
And people get upset that they don't have things in the grocery stores. I see it all the time.
Maybe you should read why. Like, go Google why and try to understand it. And
that's, I think, something that needs to be pushed more to the public and talk about. Not just, well, it was a bad. We didn't have a great growth this year, so it's not in most of the grocery stores. Well,
it's just just sort of like passing news. Like,
good growth? Is it just going to keep happening, or is it just a one-off thing? Because most likely it's not going to be a one-off. They're going to keep having these problems if it's drought related or flooding. Like I know southeast of the United States where they have flooding issues. Well, I guess it is
hurricanes and
they have all the flooding issues.
Mid-Atlantic to the south. We have hurricanes and
we have the 100-year
flood. Like North Carolina lost
as well.
I forget which hurricane it was, but one of them we had like almost $2 billion worth of agricultural losses in North Carolina from floods.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I see, like, for me, that's probably something you go, oh, well, all these homes were destroyed. And then you go, okay, what about the farmlands that people rely on this stuff for?
There's no homes, and then the crop from that year is same thing with livestock.
Yeah,
and the livestock drowned too.
Obviously these are things, but I don't think that people generally think of it. They just think of like the human lives, but they don't think of everything else that we rely on.
Until it's not at the grocery store. They don't realize there's a problem. When they suddenly can't find, their orange juice or their chicken or
but there's supposed to be a big, is it Kentucky? Or I can't remember. I saw like a week or two hiccups. Sorry, a week or two ago that they were having a massive avian flu issue, and they had to slaughter all the turkeys, or all the chickens.
Yeah, to cull them.
Cull all of them. Said there's no chickens coming out of here, and there's going to be some issues because they supply the most chickens to the country.
Yeah, I thought I saw that trending, and I didn't want to know why, because I had a feeling it was to deal with death and disease. Yeah, and that's and that's also like a food production, or animal production. Ooh. But that's and when the way that they produce chickens, they don't live very long, so the infrastructure involved can't be too expensive or too involved, and it's Yeah.
You know, try to buy local. Like I get bags of frozen chicken just because it's easy. But if I want some, like if I'm at the grocery store and I have something very specific planned out, I'll try to buy local because a lot of the grocery stores here they supply heavily local farms. Like
That was
I
nice.
go
I
the one
just look for the
closest to me.
cheapest.
I usually do, but it's actually not that much more expensive than
Oh, really? Here it
than
is.
like
It's,
Foster Farms or something. I think just because there's so much of it here, like I can go get some Angus steaks, and it's really not. It's really reasonably priced, and they're local,
yeah. I
so I
also
might
try to
as
limit
well.
how much meat I eat in general, but
We usually eat chicken, but once in a while, like maybe once a month, we'll
cheap
go with like.
protein. I love eggs.
Yeah, I
Cheap
really do enjoy
protein.
eggs. My dogs love eggs too, so
My cats love eggs.
eggs are pretty good also.
Everyone loves eggs.
I make eggs, and my dogs are immediately there, like me, me, me. I'm like, yeah, okay, have a bite. I know.
My one of my cats almost like broke her leg. She was so excited to like get to the eggs. She's like
Oh
lunging
my
and
god. my
yeah, it's dangerous.
At some point I need to take a video. I have bananas. These bananas usually ripe pretty fast, but I swear to God, these bananas are taking the sweetest time in the world to just ripen, and they weren't even that
You may
green
have
to
been
begin
picked
with.
too early.
Yeah, they
Oh,
weren't. They were like half yellow and like a little bit of green at the top, but they're just taking their sweet time. But my dog, you've never seen a happier animal until you put a banana in front of my dog, and it's pitiful.
yeah.
It's so pitiful. So my goal is get those bananas ripen and I take a video of him and his
Yes, I want to see it.
banana and pretzel buns. Loves pretzel buns.
Really? Huh.
I know those two things. It's just like it's a whole different animal that I'm dealing with, and he's just whimpering and jumping and doing all these things. And my God, it's a clown act.
Aw.
It's hilarious.
Well, hopefully the banana crisis, I forget what it is with bananas, the fungus or something, or bacteria.
I think it was a fungus.
Is it? Yeah, hopefully that'll, I have no idea. Hopefully that'll, I know there are breeders working on it because there are
Yeah,
always breeders
they
working on
have
it,
to.
but
That's
yeah,
like definitely not something that
that's
I could just be like,
scary.
well, let's just hope it doesn't happen. You know?
I know it's happening, and it's always like even when we have new varieties released.
Yeah.
It's what we call an arms race. Like literally, like we actually call it an arms race because pathogens are always evolving.
Yeah, it's a perpetual issue, and it's just
Mhm.
something that's behind the scenes that people don't see. Which again is a big fault I think that we have as society is not being transparent with this
Yeah.
type of work that's going on.
Or I don't know if it's transparency because honestly, like, if someone were to show interest, I'm sure almost all my bosses would be like, "Yay, like come
Lack of
and we'll
interest.
show you what we're doing." Lack
Well,
of interest, but also like
It's not
it's
upfront.
not
Like
a
it's not a memo.
glamorous.
It's not in the
It's yeah,
newspaper.
it's
It's like
it's
somebody
not
has to
glamorous
search for
work.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I used to post a lot about like, oh, this is what I'm doing or today. I've gotten away from that, COVID too, because like I was sitting at home a
Yeah.
lot, and
The last 2
when I
years we've
did
been
go
talking
in,
about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's yeah, but I think it's something, you know, I kind of there's so much celebrity culture and like movies and all these like
Yeah.
things that are just materialistic that are more important to people than sustenance. But yeah, I
I,
think there should be more attention brought
we
to
have
it, and
there's very
we
few
need our
movies
own
that touch on it.
agriculture celebrities.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, did you ever see the movie Interstellar? Like
Yes, that's the weird
the
one,
premise of that
right?
was yeah, it's all time travel fourth fifth dimensional really, but the start of it,
It
the
was
premise is there's problems
trippy.
with they have soy and wheat. Soy wins out, wheat falls to the side, but they have massive food production issues that basically destroys food production across the entire planet, and everybody was growing wheat to try to keep up food production. Everybody grew soybeans to try to keep up food production because of whatever pest completely wiped everything out because of the changing climate in the planet. Like, so they
Hmm.
like, it was a very exaggeration, but a slight nod to things have the potential to get really rough in this type of way in the future. Or water is, the other hot commodity of the future that
Another reason why
is
I want to
gonna
live in
be a
the East
stockpile
only.
thing. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you have, what was that? Dark Water. It came out just a couple years ago, I think, but it's all about water rights and contamination and how
Um,
it being privatized is screwing people over and that sort of thing. Or Erin Brockovich, I know, like
oh yeah.
she's still out there. I didn't realize, like, I was watching that movie a couple
Yeah.
years ago, and I was like, I wonder if she's on social media. And I went and looked and went,
Oh
she is still out
yeah,
there, like
she has
campaigning
a
like
presence.
hell. Yeah, she
Mm-hmm.
is still out there doing the damn thing. Like, sweet, this is like fantastic. But have I heard of her in
Yeah.
the news? No.
She does come up occasionally. I did hear her recently,
Oh,
but I
that's
don't
good.
recall for what.
Probably something about water
Yeah.
rights and contamination. I know, something, but yeah, there
Yeah.
definitely needs to be more out,
More awareness, more, yeah,
more
just I
awareness.
think people just need to talk about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't talk about it, then who's gonna even know about it? But
Yeah. I
if
mean,
you don't talk
everyone was
about it, people
like,
aren't gonna have any interest or know that they're even interested in it either. Like, you didn't know
yeah.
you
And
were
that's one
interested in
reason,
it until you happened to see that study with
yeah.
tomatoes.
And that's another reason why the whole GMO thing was so frustrating because everyone was just so stuck on this like very specific aspect of plant breeding, genetic
Yeah,
engineering, which is just
right.
one little aspect that's not as widely used as people like to think it is. And it was so demonized that it just kind of it's like the first question people ask me when I tell them what I do is like, oh, do you genetically modify crops? And I'm like,
Right. It was a hot topic, and they go, "Oh, CRISPR." Like, big
CRISPR,
sigh.
like I don't use any of them, but like I attend seminars all the time where I'm listening to people like who use CRISPR for a variety of things. It does a lot more. I mean, it's a very useful tool.
Yeah.
It's not the most efficient from what I understand, but yeah, I'm very much like your traditional, like that's breeding and that's just public sector mainly. And yeah,
No. Well, I
I
hope
don't
that
really do the fancy stuff.
I hope that this, at least me trying to do this, can help some people. Because I mean, there's so many STEM, science podcasts out there, whether specific to space or specific to health or whatever. But I really hope, I've had some feedback from people, thankfully, that are saying they've learned some stuff from this, like being able to encompass all of STEM in this, and not just like being a host and having somebody on here. Like, I'm not gonna call up, try to get Neil deGrasse Tyson beating beating a dead horse with a stick. There's zero purpose to that.
Kinda,
Like, find
yeah.
people
Aren't
that
people
are
tired
behind
of
this.
seeing him?
Yes, completely tired of him talking. Sorry to all the
Yeah.
fans, but like, being
Yeah.
people that are behind the scenes like you, that are actually doing the work and not just being a spokesman about it, like, and to
Yeah.
understand better all, because there's so much different work going on. And just, I don't know, I have I have a thing. I just want normal people that are not like in some celebrity light to tell the world what they do and why it's important what they do.
Yeah. Sort of that everyday, yeah, real people
Yep.
who do real
Real
work.
shit.
And
Real people doing
you
real
can
shit.
see like I'm at work, but I'm yeah, in the office. Probably see like the lab stuff behind me, but
I see shelves of things. I mean,
yeah, this lab is old and my PI inherited it. So it's got a lot of stuff and we're getting ready to move in a few months to a new lab in a new
exciting.
building.
Exciting.
Yes, very.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah,
That's a
but
lot to
I
pack.
hope, yeah. No, not all that stuff is coming with
Oh, okay.
us. Gosh. Yeah, I actually like, we did this chemical amnesty thing at NC State recently, a couple weeks ago, and I only got like 20 something bottles in there, and I could have easily put more just to like get out of the lab. And But moving is going to be fun, but it's also going to be, there's a lot of drawers to go through. And my predecessor was really good at finding like random things and keeping them. And I'm over here like, this box is like 20 years old and it's never been used. Do we even have like a pipette for these pipette tips? Like, what is this?
Laboratory pipette.
Yeah. And I'm very much against that because it's just not safe. And then there's so many drawers I keep opening, like granted they're labeled, but not, to me, they're not very specific. Like, and you still find drawers without a label that have things where like, oh, like that's a gold mine. I found Allen wrenches the other day that I really needed for this thing I was taking apart, and they were hidden in this drawer that wasn't labeled. Meanwhile, there's 2 drawers labeled tools.
And decluttering and moving process.
Oh gosh. Yeah. A lot of times I go to the lab across the hall because they're much more organized, and I know they have everything that I'll ever need. So.
Nice. That's perfect.
Yeah. But when we move, it'll be nice. Looking forward to that. But yeah, maybe I helped a little, and I'm more than happy to come back. And
I think you absolutely did. I mean, I learned plenty. I don't know shiznit about plant genetics other than like, you obviously like the basics of, you want to keep using the plant that obviously has a trait that you want, but besides that, like that's an overly generalized.
Yeah. Then the plant breeder, like, you don't want to use that specific plant with that trait, like solely because you're putting, evolution like pressure on. Yeah.
So I'm sure this is very helpful. I'm turning, so the podcast will be bi-monthly. I guess this will be a mini update for anybody that's stuck through this long before we end.
You can edit it, right? I mean, I know we're live, but you could probably go back and...
I could. I mean, I edit a little bit out in the beginning or maybe the end, like when I put it onto like Spotify or Google Podcasts or whatever, and add a little this and that to it. But
I would hate editing.
I really don't do much. I'm like, here's a little music intro for like 10, 15 seconds or whatever, just to start it. I really am just like, people can just listen and do the thing if they want. But doing it bi-weekly, every second weekend and fourth weekend of the month. And then in between that, I have decided to do like climate news catch-up updates and what's going on, that sort of thing. I thought would be useful since it kind of ties into me doing my climate change page that I talk about too. So
yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
Try to do something, because I mean, I could talk about so freaking much with climate change. So
that's another rabbit hole.
It's an absolute rabbit hole. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I just read a lot, and at least it'll get me to talk about it, because most of the time I feel like I'm talking to a wall about it. Like, I know there's like plenty of people that are interested in it, but yeah, I feel like I talk to a wall a lot. So it'll be my way of being able to talk about new things that are up and coming, or maybe like an episode here or there to dispel any current myths about it, because that's a big thing.
Oh, myths.
God, it's a huge thing.
We live in a world full of yeah.
For anyone that's listening to the podcast bit and not the visual bit, just making angry motions with my hand. Because most of the time I just
make believe.
Like, God, why are you like this, people?
Yeah.
It's not that. It's like, it's not a hard thing to understand, and I think I'm in a slight unique position, having as heavy of a math and physics background that I do have, because it's largely math and physics applied. When you really
I think it's easy for us who have background and like solid working in that area versus like people who haven't had the background or experience or opportunity to learn what we've learned. It's
That's
Yeah.
I was going to attend a school, then decided not to. Talking to the counselor for the environmental science program, and she's like, "Oh, you've taken lots and lots of math and physics." I'm like, yeah, like 3.5 years of each, really. And but she's like, the people that are in environmental science, like they have to take like the intro, like intro physics 1, 2, 3, and calc 1, 2, or whatever, but they don't go beyond that. And there's really so much more complicated about environmental science that relies on those things too. And she said, like, knowing, having a stronger background in those will help you understand more about it. And I have my own, like, I'm not in school, but I have all these environmental science textbooks that I go through, and like hydrogeology textbooks, and like it's super incredibly applicable to have a fundamental understanding of those background topics to be able to explain these other topics too. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
interesting how much different sciences rely on other sciences. It's a
Oh
thing.
yeah. Yeah.
It's a thing. So
And like we like to say in plant breeding, it's an art and a science.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with
Yeah.
STEM these days, right? Too the STEAM, not STEM, the art.
Whatever.
I'm still trying to understand the A part of it, but that's the thing.
Is the A for art?
Yeah, it's for art.
Okay. I mean, I definitely see how it's related, but like that's maybe bias on my part because I mean, I was more heavily into arts at one point, but
Right.
yeah.
And
I also scored really high in sciences while I was in school. So I don't know. I know for some people they're related.
yeah, the like state. Yeah, I don't. I
But
know I do artsy fartsy things, but I'm still like still reading and trying to understand. Like obviously there's links, and like there's links between mathematics and music too.
Oh yeah.
But I'm still learning about the A going to be in STEM, and people don't like STEM anymore. They want it to be STEAM. So I'll figure that out. Whatever. Just like, yeah, let's
Sciences,
talk about the
arts
damn
and
thing.
sciences. You can either say sciences or arts and sciences. I
don't know.
Yeah.
Science and arts. Although A before S, but whatever sounds better. I don't know. There's a thing. But I've been rambling. I've taken you away for almost 2 hours now. Almost 2 hours,
But
Tiffany.
okay, I've had fun talking to you, and I know that I'm just boiling water right now. So
Are you still boiling that 300 Celsius water? What?
well, I'm trying to get it to 100 Celsius, and I've been sort of rigging up a beaker to hopefully not lose or evaporate too much water while I'm so it takes a while. Like yesterday it was going all day for 9 hours. So yeah, wow. I work on other things too. I'm just something I don't have to watch. I just let it go and see, okay, how much water is evaporated? Where are you at? So that when I do run this assay I'm running, I can, hopefully have a good idea of, because when I add water to it, it changes the temperature of the water, and I have things that need to boil for 30 minutes, and yeah.
Right.
So I'm just working out some tweaks and things, and it's been a while since I've been working in a lab. Yes. Yes.
Great. Well, I mean, I'm totally game to, do this and everything more and on or off, whatever. But I love being able to talk to people in different fields that I don't know anything about, which is a lot of fields, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, there's a shit ton. I don't know. I mean, good grief. I think, life is, we're ever evolving in our everyday lives, and there's always something new to learn. And
absolutely.
I just, you never really stop. Mm-hmm. We're so specialized these days. It's good to be curious and
forever curious. Therein lies my problem in life.
I have a very wrinkly brain.
Wrinkly?
Well, how they say, like,
what?
When you learn something new, you get a new wrinkle, like, in your brain.
I've never.
Have you ever heard that?
No.
Oh my gosh.
I've never heard that.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, like how I grew up, but yeah, I always heard like when you learn something new, you get a new wrinkle in your brain. So
Oh
I
my
have a very
god.
wrinkly brain.
Just
I have a
neurons are
very
just
wrinkly
riding the
brain.
waves in your brain. That's awesome. Tiffany,
I
like
can
a
be
shirt
very
that says, "Do you
random if
have
you
a
haven't
wrinkly brain?
noticed.
Is your brain wrinkly enough?"
My brain's extra, extra wrinkly.
Oh my gosh, I should make a shirt
I
that
try
says,
to
"I have a
learn
wrinkly
something
brain."
new.
Just
Make
gonna
one
be
for
like,
me or a cup, a coffee mug.
"Oh yeah, I will totally do this. Totally gonna do this."
I have a very wrinkly brain. It's a good thing.
I'm doing it. This is gonna be great. Okay, I'm gonna make a mug
Is
to
that
send
is
you.
that not a saying? Am I getting it
I
wrong?
don't
I
know.
mean,
I would love
I
for
am like
whoever listens
pretty.
to this podcast to weigh in if they have ever heard that saying. We would greatly appreciate it.
I am pretty spacey and I get things easily confused, especially sayings. They get mumbled in my head. That's always a mumble or jumble of things
I mean,
going
there's so
on.
many
So
random sayings from different different
yeah.
regions, cultures, age gaps, or whatever. I mean, I repeat a lot of old sayings from my grandparents, and people look at me like, "What?" Oh,
Oh, that's so nice.
yeah, very close.
I love grandparents. I don't have any anymore, so I love
Oh,
grandparents. Like
oh,
I've always loved them. I
yeah,
miss
they're the
mine.
best. They're the bestest. I spent so much time with them growing up, so they're very.
So much to learn. I wish I could ask my grandfather and my grandmother questions, and especially I mean yeah, and I lost my father last year, and that's
Right.
been another like I don't have those people
Yeah.
anymore.
My
But,
grandma's like the old pioneer woman's type,
oh,
like
that's
she
awesome.
the canning, and she used to make my outfits when I was a kid, sew my outfits.
My
She's the one that
grandmother
taught me to
did those things
crochet and
too.
everything. So, you know,
Oh, my grandmother taught me how to sew, but I don't know how to sew anymore.
I do it once in a blue moon anymore. I feel like I don't do it that much anymore. So it's my giant pile of fabric that I bought, and it's just waiting for me to touch it. It's a thing. So, right. 1 hour and 57 minutes and 4 seconds, Tiffany. I love you. This is fantastic.
Well, us Southerners can just talk and talk and talk. I mean, we're good at talking.
I just, if you let me talk about anything that's science related, adjacent, I would love to just talk forever because I don't have anyone in my immediate vicinity to talk about it with. And social
Um,
media is like not. You can't just sit there and type out on Facebook or whatever back and forth forever. Like there's so much
it's
lost in
so
translation. Like, bleh, whatever.
yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah,
Oof.
absolutely, absolutely. I know.
Well, anytime I'm down to join you, especially if you want to talk about plant breeding or if you
Yeah,
have any more questions. Like, yeah,
we should
and
do
you
a
should
mini
probably
episode
edit
about.
this.
Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit. But we should do a mini episode about houseplants. Because you're my houseplant woman. We
Yes,
should totally do a mini episode about houseplants,
yes.
and I think that would be really beneficial.
I
Because
feel
I
like
know
growing
these are all the
houseplants
questions. So,
is an art and a science,
oh my god,
though.
it is.
Like,
It absolutely is.
yes, yeah.
Especially the area that you live in is so much nicer for growing houseplants than the area that I live in. So,
Except for like 1 or 2 months out of the year, but yeah, it is.
yeah, well, I mean, you definitely. I'm super grateful that my houseplant survived being in 30 degrees temperature for days when we lost power. So
Oh yeah, you lost power. Ooh.
it happens. I mean, it happens, and it's just very cold here. I don't turn my heat on overnight, so I usually wake up and it's like 50 degrees inside. I'm like, oh, turn the heat on, and my plants are still growing.
Oh my
They're adapting.
gosh,
They're adapting quickly.
girl.
I know.
If it's 68 in my apartment, I'm like,
Oh, we don't even with the heat on, it doesn't get that high in here because it's so drafty and not well insulated. So, but my plants are growing. I got some new leaves on some of them still.
you would
I
do
have,
well with orchids.
yeah.
Phalaenopsis orchids, they love the winter chill.
Well, they'd probably like it here then.
Usually, yeah, it's after Valentine's. You could probably still go to a big box store and find some on clearance.
Oh, is that a big thing for
And
Valentine's
grow them
Day?
in, yeah. Orchids are huge for Valentine's Day. And then usually
Fair.
afterwards they go on sale.
Oh, Trader Joe's
And
here
then,
always has orchids. Now that I think about it, they always have a wall of orchids, like all time
yeah.
of the year. So
Yeah, they're good at
easy peasy.
having orchids.
Yeah.
The Phalaenopsis orchids are so easy in water.
Like just straight up water.
Mm-hmm.
What? Oh.
You're right. We should do a show.
Yeah.
I could get
We're
my
gonna
little
learn some
orchids and my
things.
other plants together and
Yeah. Okay,
show
we're
you
gonna
how I
plan this
grow
out.
things.
Yeah, and I'll bring on my tiny little my Hoya Chelsea that you sent me. There's just one little chunk of it left. I don't know why. It just kept getting sadder and sadder, and there's one chunk
I never
holding out.
watered that thing. Like I watered it twice.
I think that was the problem. I let it get too dry.
Maybe too dry.
Yeah, because I was trying to be super careful not to overwater things, and it just got sadder.
See, when you think about it, that's when you have problems. Lately, I've been impatient with my my 60 something plants in my apartment. I've been kind of impatient and like, because everyone except for my orchids are kind of like in a
funk.
They're just slow right now.
Yeah,
but
it's the season.
Temperatures are going to go back up, and
yeah, I'm waiting.
Yeah,
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
My Marantas are still throwing out new growth though. Those things never stop.
Oh.
My lemon lime like prayer plants, the Marantas with the oval leaves that are viney. Good grief. Those are the most impressive things I have. They don't stop. And they don't need high humidity. Just don't let them dry out.
Nice. Yeah. I've actually, I got a humidifier and I run that, and I got my little grow lights last week. I'm trying. I am trying and testing out new things and seeing how it works. Experimenting.
Yeah, I have
stuff, so.
Really?
I had this really
It's probably too cold.
Probably. I don't know. I had this big Hoya and I was vining out so long, and I was like, fine. And I trim you back a bunch and I put them in water and they rotted away.
Too cold. Too cold. 70 degrees.
Put them by the heater. Yeah, it was probably my problem that it's,
You need a seedling mat. I have seedling mats. I have a huge one. Yeah, I have, and my terrarium is sitting on a seedling mat.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Work in progress. I just don't have the space.
They're not expensive.
I just don't have the space to have things everything are in these tiny little shelves. I just don't have an area for things to sit and properly have something like that. So unless it could fit in a 6-inch by 6-inch square,
they make different sizes.
Can you?
But no.
Probably
Lord, no, don't cut them.
Okay.
You don't cut them. But yeah, they make different sizes, and we can get into that on another.
Okay, we'll figure out it.
And you and I can chat that over too.
Yeah. Make sure I'm not.
Girl, I could talk plants, all things about plants all day, every day.
Okay. Well, we'll do an episode. Just be like, okay, here's this plant, Tiffany. Tell me. And this plant.
A little clinic.
Make it do a thing.
And then I can show you. Yeah. I'll have to figure out where to do it though, because I have plants at work and I have plants at home. I probably have equal amounts of plants at home and work.
Oh my god.
Okay. I have well over 100. It's a lot.
God. I haven't counted.
I have a problem.
In a while since I killed some.
Yeah, I stopped counting. I have a problem.
It's a totally fine problem to have.
I think so too.
Nice. It's nice to have green things growing, especially in a city. Yeah, you have a little bit of natural things happening.
Plants make people happy.
Happy plant people. Yes.
Yes. And I do kill my fair share. It happens, but okay. Yeah. Yeah, no.
I haven't killed that many lately, so I'm very proud of myself. It was the first one that I killed in months. My Hoya compacta in months. So that's improvement for me.
I left a Dracaena outside all winter and it survived our long cold snaps, but it recently died.
Oh.
It was just over it, I guess. The last cold snap, it was nope, just one too many.
I'm done.
Yeah.
trying anymore.
Yeah.
I
And I
don't
didn't
get
really
it.
water it. I don't think water was the issue because in the cold, you don't want them to be
Hmm.
wet. So,
Yeah, right,
yeah.
right.
But yeah, I did kill plenty of things. But it's also like fun to just see. Like, I still have a Tradescantia that is in my breezeway, like not in the sun, it's in the
Uh-huh.
shade. And it's still
Just to see how it
growing. It's
does.
still,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the only Tradescantia I have that's above ground. Like everything else is just
Oh,
either
cool.
dormant or dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
And it's, yeah. And I don't water it unless my neighbor does. But I don't. Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna end this for everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll end the stream for everybody to. I should have some outro thing saying, thank you, Tiffany, for coming on again. And you're going to come on again because I love hanging out with you and chatting on here. It's fantastic and I have fun. And I learn shit.
Yeah.
I learn
Yeah,
shit.
I like, and I learned shit too from you.
Yay! I
And
hope we
it
can
helps
help
to
people
kind of
learn.
refresh my
Yeah,
memory. I've
for
been
sure.
out of school for not 10 years, but it's, yeah, long enough.
Yeah, helped you jar it up in there a little bit. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
hope everybody enjoyed this, and I have lots of links on. Because everybody who will check in on YouTube, I have lots of links on there to Spotify, Google Music. Um, I had fun making the Streamlabs stuff, which has like stickers and fun little shit like that. So that's a thing too.
To buy,
Yeah,
you have merch.
I have merch now.
Yes.
So I guess I have
I
to
need to
kind of
check it
keep
out. I'm
doing
so
this since I have
bad.
merch now. And I'm just like, I'm constantly just like playing around with new designs on new products and everything. So it's a thing. There's a beanie on there, and I'm going to order the beanie at some point. Just has a little
Yay.
acorn
Okay, well,
on
I'll
it.
check it out.
Yeah,
Oh,
so that's a thing. If
acorns.
you want to hang on for a quick second, but I will say, everybody, thank you for watching or listening. Thank you for listening. Until 2 weeks from now.